call the meeting to order again. Tonight we were supposed to be here for a public hearing for the budget contract, and I think, John, you have a statement to make?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is a representative on the board from the Planning Commission. I make the public aware that a meeting this afternoon came to the attention of this board that a number of the adjacent property owners potentially did not receive notice in proper time frame. Therefore, this board is very concerned that it hasn't necessarily met all of the requirements necessary in order to conduct a proper public hearing on this application. Therefore, I believe it would be in the best interest of the board to send the application back to the Planning Commission for further study. That said, knowing that many of you all here are here obviously this evening to comment on this application, the board would like to go forward with public comment and accept your thoughts and opinions and your public comment on this application, knowing that those adjacent landowners that didn't get an opportunity to express their opinion to the Planning Commission will most likely get a chance to do so when it meets again later this month, and then potentially again before this board if it's moved forward. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I think it's first piece of business to solicit public comment on this application, unless any other board members here would like to make any remarks on what I've shared here this evening.
So I was wondering if you can make a time limit for the planning meeting this month. I'm not sure when that is.
We can run the ad as of tomorrow morning so that it
Okay.
can be heard during the month of July, June.
And would the other notices to the adjacent landowners need to go out again?
It needs to go out tomorrow, and we can do that.
Okay. Are we going to do certified mail this time, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so basically we have a public comment instead of public hearing. Any other comments? No?
Do you want to give Mr. Fletcher?
All right, then before the public comment, we'll give Mr. Fletcher the opportunity to take your
Sir.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Ms. Kaiser, Mr. Hennessy, neighbors and friends. My name is Bill Fletcher. I live in the Piedmont District and have for a number of years. I filed this application, I first started talking to Ms. Kaiser about it, I think around April. And it's June now, and I understand because of the defective notice sending it back to the Planning Commission, I have no objection to that. I want to work with the board. I'm not interested in destroying Rappahannock County in any way. I want to enhance Rappahannock County if I can. One of the problems I see that's facing the county now is because everybody's moving in here and expects the services from a larger community like Fairfax or Arlington or different places, and we aren't set up to do those. The problem we have, one of the problems we have in this county is taxation. And that's one of the reasons why I started this. It's my understanding, and this goes back years, probably to when I was in college studying economics, is a force multiplier on tourism. I tried to find out today from talking to various people at the fire department what they made and approximately what everybody else got each year from the 4th of July event, which I don't charge for, and it's probably around the neighborhood of $50,000, I think it would be fair to say. And one of the real questions, and I read up on this today, is whether this is economically a good thing for the county or not. I personally believe it is. I'm not planning on having fires around and people, you know, having a campground or anything like that. But I'd like to see this community draw closer together. I think the Stewart Field, which the name we had, we purchased that land, my grandfather did in 1858, I believe, was the last survey on it. And I included a fire pit that I built on the Thornton River because the National Elk Foundation wanted to have a meeting down there, one of their members, and I'm in talks with them. And I don't know whether it'd be 50 or 100 people. I have no idea. And one of the reasons why I think we need an event area like this is particularly for weddings. I tried to call around and see what, like the Marriott Ranch charged for a wedding. I thought they would probably be pretty reasonable. They're $25,000. Cliff Miller's is $5,000 basic rent for the barn, is my understanding. I didn't ask Cliff about it, probably should have. There have been a lot of complaints about the traffic. We've had events there for almost 75 years. I never really heard any complaints about it before, but suddenly I get complaints for everything. I think fire's an unrealistic fear at Stewart Field. Normally there's a stream that kind of bisects the field that I think would stop it. And my understanding from taking some fire courses is fire burns up. Most of the places where the people would park, it goes down towards the stream. I think it's a good application. I have contracted with someone to bring in, I think, 2,500 tons of millings. And I'm going to fix both of the entrances. There are two entrances at the present time to I think it's 32 feet is what they want. The highway department, I met with a member of the highway department and talked to him. He said, the only thing you need to do if you have an event over 1,000 people is probably get some police out here, because that's the way you've been doing it ad infinitum. I believe this would be a positive thing for the county, and I certainly have no objection to an attendance tax being put on in the future. In fact, I think it should be, to generate more revenue for the county. And I think it might promote and help a lot of local businesses and people. I'd rather use people from Rappahannock on anything that's done, if I can find somebody to do it, than anything else. And I think the Board of Supervisors really needs to think about what you're going to do as a tax base. Just from Richie's leaving alone is probably going to be additional $100,000 cost to the taxpayers. Ms. Kaiser's getting another assistant. I'm sure that's another $50,000. I mean, there are a lot of things that are being done that are going to cost this county a lot more money, and is a taxpayer, the power to tax is the power to destroy. And if you don't do something and allow other businesses or other innovative things to come in, when tax time comes around, you're going to be burdening everybody in this room with additional taxes. I mean, I think this is something that could be positive for the community. Am I going to have events of 8,000? I sincerely doubt it. I hope I do. But I'm not talking about, I'm talking about the things I'm thinking of are all the bands in Rappahannock get together and have some music during the day into the evening and cut off at 10. I don't want any lights out there or big floodlights. There is one substantive question from the ordinance, though, that I would like you all, if you're sending it back, to address or tell me what to do. There is a requirement for gravel parking for large events in one part of the ordinance. I can do it. I can put down as much gravel as you want, but I think it's going to change the nature of the field, and if I put in that kind of parking, then I think I'm going to have to put in lights. And I don't want to do that, but that's something you all need to consider in your discussions and direct me. As far as the application, what I thought and what makes sense to me, I filed this, I think I started talking to Debbie in April, and it's June, and now it looks like there's going to be a resolution to August or September. Well, that's damn near 6 months. If anybody else tries to do it, or tried to have an event, it's 3 or 4 months from the inception till you can do it. What I was trying to do is have a location where if somebody wanted to have an event, we could rent it to them. Ms. Kaiser and the Board of Supervisors or the Planning Commission would have a list of what needs to be done at the event, so you wouldn't be tied up, the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors wouldn't be tied up hearing a number of different applications. You've got wineries now here that can have almost any event they want, with a lot of alcohol served, and then they're put out on roads that aren't near as good as 522. I think it's better to have a location that's somewhat central. This place is about 2 miles from the geographic center of the county. And it could service most of the community. They were my reasons for applying. If you have any questions or anybody else has any questions, I'd be glad to try and answer them. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Bill.
Anybody here have any questions?
Not this time.
Okay. Public comment is now under the conditions that if you want to speak, you may have that opportunity. Just please state your name when recognized and the district that you're in. Direct your comments to the board, and I declare the public comment open.
David, is there a sheet back there, a sign-in sheet, or is there one going around the room?
There is, but someone got more names.
Well, that's okay, just because your name isn't on there doesn't mean you can't speak. We're just gonna go with these people first.
The comment sheet goes first, and then we'll get people to do the comment. This Mary Krugel,
I think there's one right before that.
Seats up there.
is that Elizabeth Johnson?
You're right.
It's in here somewhere.
Mr. Chairman, before we begin public comment, is there a time constraint that you would like to put? That sounds like we're going to have a lot of speakers this evening. I didn't know if there's a time.
3 to 5 minutes.
3 to 5? Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to read my statement, and I'm not as eloquent on my feet as others. My name is Elizabeth Johns. I'm also in the Piedmont District, and I'm here to speak on behalf of my family, my husband Chris, our 3 adult children, Noel, Louise, and Tim. Chris and I are also signatories on a letter dated May 31st to the Board of Supervisors from several landowners abutting and adjacent to Thornton Hill Farm. Since 1990, we have lived on Sperryville Pike, roughly a quarter mile from Thornton Hill Farm. Our children grew up and went to school here. With open spaces and a close-knit and caring community, Rappahannock has been a wonderful place for our family, and we are thankful for and grateful to the leadership of this county for their role in making it a special place. While we recognize the challenges of maintaining agricultural lands, we are profoundly concerned by the scope of Mr. Fletcher's request for a special exception to the county land use ordinance and the speed with which it was approved by the Planning Commission. This proposal, which requests unlimited approval to hold 30-plus events with up to 8,000 people in attendance, is unprecedented, and we respectfully ask that the Board of Supervisors carefully consider the ramifications. We have serious issues with the plan as proposed. First of all, we believe that county ordinances require a permit for each event. Approving Mr. Fletcher's plan in its current form would therefore be in direct violation of the county's regulations. These thoughtful ordinances were put in place for good reasons, requiring that each event be considered on its own merits with regard to impact on the county's infrastructure, nearby residents, safety concerns, and our environment. Seemingly innocuous and wholesome events, such as weddings and music festivals, can have a profoundly disturbing effect on those who live in close proximity, with issues such as excessive noise, light pollution, traffic, and security. The current ordinances also protect against the ability of one person to make a profit while degrading others' enjoyment and property values. Mr. Fletcher's events would be run by outsiders seeking to make a profit with little investment in our community. Who will be responsible in the event of a fire that spreads to our woods and beyond? Who will be sure that our streams are not polluted by careless people? It is striking to us that it appears that no input was requested or received from law enforcement, fire and rescue services, or VDOT regarding the viability of such large-scale events. It is true that neighboring counties have facilities such as fairgrounds for large events. However, I believe those fairgrounds are publicly owned and supervised, and as such, revenues flow back to the community. Mr. Fletcher's proposal is for individual profit, and we don't see any evidence that the events he describes will benefit our community. In fact, the potential for excessive traffic and noise could have a degrading effect. We have been Mr. Fletcher's neighbors for more than 27 years, and I believe we've been good neighbors. We have welcomed local fox hunters whose kennels reside on his property to ride across our land. We have never complained about the traffic and noise resulting from the point-to-point races or the 4th of July celebrations. But what Mr. Fletcher has now proposed is a completely different kind of permit, both in scope and frequency, and should be rejected. While perhaps nobody was legally obligated to inform us of this plan, it certainly would have been neighborly to invite us to give our views at the meeting of the Planning Commission, or at the very least inform us of an application of this magnitude. However, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak now, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Is this Mary or Mason?
That's me. Hi, my name is Mary Kugel. I live in just over the line in Stonewall District. When I first heard about this, I went to Debbie Kaiser's office to get a copy of the application. And she asked me what my objections were. Well, I hadn't seen the application yet, so I very flippantly said, not in my backyard. Then I had an opportunity to actually look at the application. And I said, whoa, not in anybody's backyard. This application is basically a blanket permit request for unspecified events on unspecified days for unspecified duration. It's, whenever we want, whatever we want, however long we want. If approved, this means that there could be rock concerts, Hell's Angels gatherings, KKK rallies. We don't know what will be held there. And with this blank check sort of approach, does the county have any recourse? And for that matter, does Mr. Fletcher have any recourse? He's basically leasing his land out to second and third party vendors, for-profit commercial endeavors. With today's laws as they are with you can't deny anybody based on freedom of speech, protected classes like sex, race, political preference. Can he deny any group who comes to him and wants to use his property? I understand that farmers in the county want supplemental income to keep afloat. I understand that. But approval of this application sets a precedent for the county. County can't show bias to any other applications that come in that are similar or identical to this. So they must approve these applications. Does this mean that this type of venue can pop up all over the country, all over the county, in any agricultural land use area? What happens to the peace, tranquility, and rural scenic beauty if this starts happening all everywhere? But back in not in my backyard. I've been a neighbor of Mr. Fletcher's for 20 years now. I live directly. My house is directly behind Thornton Hill property. We as neighbors have accommodated the noise and the traffic of the July 4th celebration, which we understand is for a good cause. I have no problem with that. We also accommodate the steeplechase races being held on Mr. Fletcher's property. And we hear the microphone all day long. We hear that all day long. We accommodate that. It's part of the community spirit. And after the races, what usually happens is there's some sort of event where the racers or the hunt clubs themselves go on our properties. The last time it was a pairs race. They traversed cross country, across all the neighbors' property. Again, we accommodated that. We also all the neighbors allow the local fox hunting clubs to hunt on our properties. And this happens 1 to 2 to 3 times a week. Again, we allow that. We encourage open space. Mr. Fletcher rents the kennels to the hunt club to board their hounds. Sometimes there's been somewhere around 100 hounds at the kennels. Well, hounds bark. They bark in the morning. They bark when they get fed at night. And their favorite time is when that hound, that fox, creeps along in the middle of the night and goes boogie, 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 and they all go ballistic. And they're howling at 3 in the morning. We accommodate that. So we're accommodating daily activities with the hounds. We're accommodating weekly activities with the hunt club. And we're accommodating the other activities that happen in the county. We feel we have made reasonable accommodations for Mr. Fletcher's endeavors for his financial gain. We have good neighbors, we have been good neighbors, and we have not complained. Because that's what good neighbors do, they don't complain. But we're complaining now. Because I feel that the application that he submitted is unacceptable. And I feel we've done a reasonable amount of accommodating, and my feeling is enough is enough. And I feel that this application should be rejected in its entirety. Thank you for your time.
Next on the list is Sean. Is that Jerry? John, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, and thank you all for the opportunity to share my concerns. Again, I'm Charles Jockin, and we have the home and 33-acre property on Barrett Lane that borders Stewart Field immediately to the south, which is in the Piedmont district. This board has historically given deference to those who would be most impacted by proposals like the one before you tonight. In this case, virtually all of the neighboring property owners, as you have heard and will hear, are asking you to reject this unprecedented application. When you convert private property, in this case zoned for the purposes and taxation of as agriculture into a for-profit commercial site, thorough and frequent oversight is required in order to protect the surrounding neighbors, the larger community, and the visiting public. With the drastic increase in vehicle traffic associated with frequent events, with hundreds or thousands of people in attendance, a thorough traffic study should be required for a proposal this vast, given the potential need for widening the highway, adding turning lanes, and even traffic lights. The same goes for an extensive environmental impact study if we're talking about RVs on the property, hundreds or thousands of people, and the impact they might have on the creek and springs, or sewage and sanitation. And what about the disposal of carcasses and the animal population decreases that result from the proposed for-profit hunting excursions and more? As is the case with the 4th of July festivities, significant law enforcement should be present for events where hundreds or thousands of people are in attendance. Has the Sheriff's Office been consulted about this application and the impact this would have on law enforcement resources? Law enforcement should also weigh in on the proposal for frequent hunting excursions with overnight camping, given the close proximity to surrounding residences. Also, without a doubt, the presence of overnight campers would mean an increase in open burning, which absolutely means an increased risk of fire emergencies. Have law enforcement or fire safety experts analyzed any plans aimed at preventing wildfires? And how will authorities be contacted in the event of an emergency given the lack of cell phone service? The distance between the property under consideration and our home is actually quite small. In the event of a wildfire caused by cigarettes, open burning, or cooking, or if a stray bullet hits my house or one of our neighbors' houses, who is liable for any damage to our property? Mr. Fletcher has indicated to the Planning Commission he is not willing to post a bond for any of these events, and he wouldn't require his organizers to do so either. If the county were to grant blanket approval for this broad application, would the county also assume liability if my house or barn burns down, or for any other personal or property damage? What about the traffic accidents caused by vehicles entering or leaving the property? As you know, in this area, noise echoes off the hills for miles away. With such wide open spaces at Stewart Field, many of the neighbors can hear everything, as has been mentioned, from the hounds to the chain clanking on the flagpole and the breeze. And so I ask you to imagine what noise would be produced at events being proposed in this application, echoing not just into neighbors' homes, but into the national park that looks down onto the property. As I mentioned before, our home is actually closer in proximity to the property under consideration than Mr. Fletcher's home. Therefore, we and many other neighbors would be subject to the noise, the lights shining into the dark sky at night, maybe even from parking lights, the traffic, and the safety risk, even more than Mr. Fletcher would be, given that he has proposed all of this taking place on the part of his property farthest from his home and closest to ours. In the years since we've been in our home here, we, as has been mentioned, and many of the neighbors present have gladly made accommodations so that Mr. Fletcher could benefit financially from Thornton Hill Farm on Stewart Field, beyond whatever income is generated from farming the land. The hounds are on our property. The races actually occur on parts of our property, and each year we make certain that our nearly 20 acres of hay is harvested just before the 4th of July, knowing that one stray spark from the fireworks could be a disaster for everyone. But we make all of these accommodations, especially for the 4th of July, because we know of the public benefit it provides to the community. But this broad application for a blanket approval to host any number of additional for-profit ventures constitutes a major departure from the history of thoughtful, lawful, and strategic efforts to encourage responsible economic development opportunities in this county. In the past, when considering far narrower, more limited applications, the board has been very deliberate and thoughtful about issues of safety, traffic, and more. Given the much broader and unprecedented scope of this application, we hope the same level of scrutiny will be applied given the very real safety risks and threats associated with what's being proposed. Furthermore, the concerns I've laid forth and the concerns shared by our neighbors exist for each event individually, regardless of whether one is being considered or 31. We respectfully ask you to reject this application and thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Brett.
That's me. Thank you very much for hearing the concerns of affected neighbors. I'm Peter Bresnan. I don't know which district I live in, but I think it's Piedmont. I'm not sure. My wife, Annie, and I are affected neighbors, though we're not directly adjacent. We're the current owners of what most folks around here call Millie's Cabin, and the 68 acres that goes with it. At the outset, I do want to acknowledge that Mr. Fletcher has made significant contributions to this community, and including his willingness to host the 4th of July event each year, which I appreciate. In addition, we feel a special affinity to the Fletcher family in that Millie's Cabin is the cabin that was owned by Mr. Fletcher's mother, and it was sold to us by one of his sisters. The property is right across Route 522 from the site that Mr. Fletcher proposes to hold these events on. We look right out on it. From our bedroom windows, we're looking right out at that flagpole that was mentioned. Our property is identified as parcel 5 on the map that was attached to Mr. Fletcher's application. It's a great cabin. We love it. We understand it was built in about 1740. We love the cabin. We love the county. We hope to leave it for our children and grandchildren to enjoy for years to come. We're deeply concerned, however, with the current application because it would radically change the character of the area surrounding our property and turn our dream house into a nightmare and destroy its value. I have many concerns, but I'm only going to mention 2. I'll focus on 2 tonight. The first is that the application is vague and incredibly overbroad. It fails to make clear with any specificity what events would be held, how long they would last, how many days or hours, what impact they would have, what steps would be taken to minimize that impact. Mr. Fletcher writes in his application that it is expected the property will have no more than 31 events, but he doesn't provide any assurance of that. He said it's expected that there will be as many as 8,000 people, but again, there's no assurance that his expectation won't change. As a result, there appears to be no hard and fast limitation on how many events will be held, how long they'll last, how many people will attend, what the nature of the events will be, what impact they'll have, or who this mysterious third party is who's going to be running them, or whether they have any insurance, or whether they're going to post a bond, or what the liabilities that may result. The basic problem is no one has enough information here about the planned activities to review or approve them. You're being asked to buy a pig in a poke. And you shouldn't do that, because you don't know whether it's really a pig, you don't know what it looks like, you don't know what you're getting. In my opinion, each event should be the subject of a separate application and review and approval, where we all have a basis of knowing exactly what the event in question is and who's involved. My second point relates to noise. That's really my primary concern here, is the noise those events will create. We moved to Rappahannock County because it's a beautiful, serene, and bucolic area. As I said, we look right out onto this event site from our yard and our bedroom windows. As you know, sounds echo and reverberate in this county. We hear every car that goes by on Route 522. We hear the hounds every morning and every night. When the 4th of July event occurs, the band sounds as if it's playing about 50 feet away in our yard. In fact, I invite you all to come out on the 4th of July so you can hear that for yourself. I'd be happy to have you. So you can get a sense of the impact. Even outdoor weddings with a band playing would be extremely loud. As far as I'm concerned, limiting that music and the noise from 7 in the morning till 10 at night is not at all a meaningful limitation. That's all day long. The application threatens to radically change the nature of the surrounding areas. It would destroy the quiet enjoyment of our property. My wife spent the entire last year renovating this cabin. We spent probably about $500,000 renovating this cabin, but the entire purchase of the property and the cabin and the renovations is well over $1 million. Now, I won't want to live there. I don't think anyone will want to live there. If every weekend in the summer there's going to be some noisy event. If the application is approved, we'll sell our property and move away, even though this will probably mean I'll lose a lot of my retirement savings, which I worked many years to accumulate. Simply put, I have no desire to live in an area dominated by noise, traffic, RVs, campers, bright lights at night, massive crowds, and the sanitation, environmental, and safety issues that they pose. Thank you for listening to our concerns. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
James Buss.
Thank you for the opportunity to present my concerns to the Board of Supervisors. My wife and I invested in Rappahannock County in the 90s and have made it our home. We have been good stewards of our land and good neighbors to all. We and our neighbors have allowed the Barton Hill Valley Hunt Club with kennels run over Mr. Fletcher's property to ride their horses, exercise their hounds, fox hunts on the property, some on a weekly basis for his financial gain, and also for the community, to support the community activities. Also, we did not receive notice but did not protest the 4th of July fireworks events, as it was good for the community. Between us on Mason Mountain and the Eldon Farm of 7,600 acres, which is an environmentally conscientious working farm, is Mr. Bill Fletcher's Stewart Farm. These are quiet, peaceful, spectacularly beautiful parts of the world, as is all of Rappahannock County. Rappahannock elders put in place ordinances to keep it that way, but that is not threatened by Mr. Fletcher's special exemption permit application. It would allow even unknown events of up to 8,000 people to attend. You can only imagine what they might do. Mr. Fletcher's application violates most of these ordinances, including but not limited to 170-52 and the addendum for field parties. My particular concerns are the loss of peace and quiet from noisy events during the day and well into the night, offensive lighting on car headlights, and the loss of dark skies. Beep, beep, beep from rubbish and porta-john trucks. 1 lane each way, Highway 522 traffic. Safety. Hunting on property that is poorly marked is unsafe. Unprofessional campfires and firework safety and ensuring and the ensuing forest fires. Injury and liability responsibilities. The impact on the historic and scenic qualities of the area. And the detrimental impact to the comprehensive plan. These are my concerns. Mr. Fletcher's application could jeopardize the current use program by leasing his agricultural land to outside contractors for profit for commercial use. Therefore, Mr. Fletcher's application would be to the detriment of all farmers in Rappahannock County. I ask the Board of Supervisors to reject Mr. Fletcher's application.
Ron Goodman.
Still haven't lowered the podium now. Thank you for this opportunity. As you recall, earlier today, we had comments about the issue of the notice and the lack of adequate and legal notice. And you will recall that I also talked about the inadequacy of the notice itself, what was written in the notice. And third, of course, the application that was called misleading in terms of what it said about who the neighbors were or what it did not say about who the neighbors were. The fact that I'm going to make some substantive comments doesn't detract, doesn't waive my comments with respect to the appropriateness of this gathering this evening or about the voidness of the Planning Commission's recommendation. I should have said at the beginning that my name is Ron Goodman. I said it earlier, so that's why I didn't repeat. My wife Rosabelle and I own property at the end of Barrett Lane, which is the lane next down Route 522. After the entrance to the property here at issue, which is owned, as you will recall, by Thornton Hill LLC. You will recall that I made a comment about the appropriateness of the applicant, and that would have to be Thornton Hill LLC, not Mr. Fletcher. You know, when I talk to my friends who live in cities, I call Rappahannock County God's country. Like John and Mary come out to God's country and visit. People move here and stay here for the beauty of this county, the quiet enjoyment of nature, the loveliness of the towns, and the collegiality of a wonderful community of people. As the county itself says, right above the picture of you supervisors, a scenic masterpiece made perfect by nature on the web. And aren't we proud of Sperryville, described as having old-time charm, and being just recently listed as the best small town to visit in Virginia? This is how it's described. No stoplight Sperryville is as quaint as they come. The author of that missed the fact that the entire county lacks a traffic light. Well, that and many other things would have to change with this application. Given its proposal to have events with over 4,000 cars, trucks, vans, RVs accessing the field through Sperryville. This county has in fact been protected by reasonable, pretty well thought out ordinances enforced by wise boards of supervisors elected by the people in the county to do just that. The county's comprehensive plan, we believe, currently in effect, reflects that protection. Let's be clear, we, I speak for myself and my wife, are not against events. And we want farmers who work their precious lands, precious gas as well, to succeed. This application, however, is completely outside the scope, the letter, and spirit of the ordinances. It requests a blanket permit. And I would want to specify, this is a blanket permit that presumably would run with the land. That means Mr. Fletcher sells it, it runs with the land. And who knows who the next person would be who would get the rights that would be presumably included in this permit. This is a blanket permit for an expected, as that was recently pointed out, means possibly more than 31 events per year. 8 of such events that involve up to 8,000 people, 8 others to have up to 2,000 people. When during the year would these events happen? In months when one normally expect nice weather, right? Say the 5 months from mid-May to mid-October. That means a minimum of 1 or more events every week during that time, and no doubt on weekends to attract more people. Now, apart from the major, incredibly major deleterious effects this plan would have on neighbors, and we've already spoken to them, and on the county, existing ordinances require a permit for each event. This makes total sense. This is not by accident. It makes total sense because one event is almost always different from another event. This makes even more sense in respect of the ideas put forth by this application, which are normally enormously varied. They vary. They vary from hunting, overnight camping, Renaissance festivals, craft fairs, and in fact to anything which the applicant dreams up on this vague application, where one event would take place during one day and another over 3 days. How does one permanent permit address issues for all future foreseeable and non-foreseeable circumstances surrounding future events? The differences from event to event with respect to traffic, time of day, access for emergency vehicles, sale and purchase and availability of liquor, number of porta-johns, potential smoke, use or not of fireworks, litter, type and loudness of music, lights, and so on, are potentially huge. One security plan cannot fit all. A VDOT review, which concludes that all is fine for a party of 150 people, is not the same as a VDOT review for a festival of 8,000 people, which requires widening of Route 522, likely traffic lights in Sperryville to access Main Street and on Main Street, and at the junction of 231 and 522. That is why the ordinances and precedent require a permit for each event. We ask that you follow the precedent and the spirit and the law that is embodied by those ordinances. This application essentially requests that land zone is agricultural, be permanently rezoned or recategorized, perhaps a better word, as commercial for any use for the exclusive profit of the applicant or for the profit of a company owned by a son through the guise of a so-called special exception. And the special exception is requested because it has a better property tax consequence than an outright conversion to commercial usage. We would request that the board very carefully look at the major consequences, and if it goes to the Planning Commission, we would ask the Planning Commission, which one representative is here, that they also look at the overarching effects. This is a major issue. It's not building of a shed on a property. This is something that has major consequences for the county and for Sperryville and for the neighbors directly involved. Thank you very much for your consideration and time.
Does anyone else care to speak? John?
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I'm John Giselle from the Piedmont District. Here representing Eldon Farms and owners of the Eldon Farms, the Lane family. I'd like to start by saying that we did receive the notice and discussed it internally and chose to, we have most issues like this, not respond. Typically what we've done is stood by and not made any comment on things like this, but we felt like this was important enough for us to come and voice our opinion. We bordered Mr. Fletcher and Stewart Field on the west side of the road and on the north side of his property, so I'd say we're by far his largest neighbor at this piece of property. I see hear the concerns that are voiced here, but I have to come and respectfully disagree. I'd like to speak in favor of this application that has been made. Several people tonight have spoken about the peacefulness and the tranquility that is in Rappahannock County and surrounding their homes. I think sometimes we forget what brings that peacefulness and that tranquility. Everybody who has spoken so far has benefited from Mr. Fletcher and his family holding that piece of property in agricultural use. If that property had been divided, as is legal right would be, and sold, and multiple homes built on it, their life would be significantly different from the noise and the traffic and the barking dogs and the fires and all of those types of things that people would do by right of the property that they own. Mr. Fletcher's chosen to hold that property. I think that's a benefit to Rappahannock County. The Lane family and Eldon Farms has held over 7,000 acres for 60 years. I think that's a benefit to the peacefulness and the tranquility of the county. I'm not sure that there's an appreciation for how difficult it is to hold land for that long. And I'm sure that there are some of you on the board that understand that. It's a drain on cash at times. Commodity markets fluctuate. Sometimes corn is great to plant, sometimes it's not. Sometimes cattle are great to raise, sometimes it's not. I applaud Mr. Fletcher for thinking about how he can raise extra cash without selling his property, without subdividing it, without creating more homes for people to move to Rappahannock County. I applaud him for thinking about how he can bring in tax revenue to the county without increasing the population of the county. I think those are good ways for landowners to be thinking. So I think this is a smart thing. Now, do I think 31 is the right number of events? I'm not sure. I think that has to be considered. Is 8,000 the right number of people to max? As a max, I don't know. Maybe it's 4,000. I think those things need to be considered. I think that it may be smart to approve use of the property in this way on a year-by-year basis instead of continuing it in perpetuity. And so I think there are a lot of considerations like that we could make. But I encourage you and also the zoning board the planning board, there you go, thank you, to consider all of those things, but not reject the permit as it stands right now. Thank you for your thoughts.
Who else would like to speak?
Jay Miller, Hampton District, and I completely agree with what John Janot had to say. Large landowners do carry a big burden that goes unappreciated in this county, and in fact, they historically get attacked. But I'm not here to speak to that or the details of the application. I'm just saying that the county has made allowances for this by designation in the zoning ordinance. They've further made it a consideration by special exception in an agricultural district. I believe historically that this place, it's been used for public events way before a lot of these people ever came here, ever thought about buying property here. And we've held, I'm sure Cooter's event was more than 8,000 people. I believe that it should be approved. It is up to you guys to figure out what are the acceptable details for the county. But I believe the county makes, the zoning ordinance allows for it, and I think that this is, if there is a spot in the county, this is the perfect place for it. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. I guess I'm swinging the balance back the other way. I'm Melanie Kubjansky. I live in Boston. Our farm is an unofficial century farm that's been in our family since before 1833. My forefathers passed to each preceding generation the role of caretaker of the land. And as a caretaker, the land is not an asset that can be sold, but rather an honor and a duty of oversight and care. Each generation in my family has utilized the land, such as growing apples, grazing cattle, to provide a livelihood for our family. Farming requires open land. Small family farms have decreased dramatically in the last 70 years. Small farms were traditionally tied to the good of their communities and their environment. Their smallness and generational longevity helped to foster communal rapport, accountability, and stewardship. Industrialized farms corroded the tradition of relation of commerce and community and a pressure to get big and to get out. As small family farmers, we walk a precarious balance to produce enough to create a livelihood and to maintain our land. Our farms are our business. There are weekend retreats. There are retirement homes. I am sure that most of the families that were forced to sell their land due to lack of revenue did so unwillingly. It's in the interest of our community here in Rappahannock to preserve our farmland and to support our farmers. I support Mr. Fletcher's application. His request maintains open space and the scenic beauty of our community. There is a major highway with good access and ample parking, and the property has been used to provide community events for decades. So I ask you to support the application. We who have been here and our forefathers are committed to keeping our community in the open space and the beauty that we love. We're committed to that. Whatever the balance that needs to be, this, I feel, is a good thing for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Good evening. My name is Hannah Krajewski. I am from the Stonewall Hawthorne district. I am a native of Rappahannock. I just recently graduated from Radford University with a degree in business. Having grown up in the county, I have attended the horse races and fireworks that have been held in Stewart Field for many years. I find that this opportunity will not damage our community, but that it will help. Mr. Fletcher will receive some income to help keep his open land in use, and it will provide the community with an additional venue to host events. These events could be weddings, for instance. They could be a small bluegrass festival, or they could be even a Renaissance fair. This will allow the youth that are becoming marrying age to get married in their hometown. This will also allow people of all ages to enjoy a show without having to drive 1 to 2 hours away from home. Thank you.
Yes.
Good evening. I'm Matthew Black. I live in the Piedmont district. Bill, I studied economics too. Done a lot of research and taught it as well. So this is a very interesting issue. Like a lot of good ideas, there are often a lot of unintended consequences, and it's the kind of stuff that economists love to dig into. And normally I would support something like this, but Bill, I wish we had a chance to talk over a beer, because I would have argued against it.
You know it.
And as much as I like you, the enormity of this it baffles me. It's so immense. But I'd like to just focus on one topic, and that is the demand on emergency services. I run with the Sperryville Rescue Squad, right now on call right now, that's why I'm dressed up. When you have an event, let's say 8,000 people, so we have a weekend where the county doubles, that puts a strain not only on the sheriff department, but on the rescue squad. And as many of you know, and I know the board knows this, the rescue squads are really taxed. We are overtaxed right now. We barely can stay up with the demand, as you might call it, for emergency services. And to the point where there's some discussion about increasing taxes in order to pay for more volunteers for the equipment. What do we do? This is a tough issue. And if you have an event, whenever we have an event, if there are 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 8,000, in fact, you have to plan on what the max says, to give somebody permission. Where are those emergency services coming from? And it's not just the fact that Sperryville is 2 or 3 miles up the road doesn't make me feel any better, because you've got the size of Rappahannock in one place, and the probability of a medical event happening is very high. And so we're responding to events down the road. Who's taking care of people elsewhere in the county who need help? So I think one way or the other, Bill, maybe this is something we've worked with the board on, is that these event planners, these other companies, maybe they pay for their own emergency services, or they chip in and pay for the extra sheriff deputies to manage the traffic. But there will be a demand on these services, and someone's going to pay for it. And either it's going to be a citizen, a Rappahannock citizen who is left hanging when they need help, or someone's going to have to actually pay a higher tax to cover this. So I'd just like to add that to your calculus. Thanks.
Andrew Haley, Piedmont, and as a business person in Sperryville, I'm concerned about the traffic. I think the whole question hinges on scale, and even if you took, well, short of taking 522 to 4 lanes, even if we had all the emergency services in the world, if somebody has a heart attack in Woodville, we got 8,000 people trying to get in. You're not going to get there. How long is it going to take? You're not going to get there. So if your grandmother's having a heart attack in Woodville on Saturday, what are they going to do? Drive the ambulance down Roosevelt Mill? I mean, it just doesn't work. I don't think.
Anyone else here to speak?
Sharon Pierce, Piedmont, and I live on the south side of Slaughter Mountain on Yancey Road. I hear the music from the fireworks if I'm not there, and that's okay, twice a year. When I first heard about this application, kind of scuttlebutt, I went, well, that's not maybe okay to have some music festivals. 31 events, 8,000 people, that's ridiculous. That's not even a serious application. And I can tell you what it'll be like for anybody who lives on the south side of Sperryville if you've got to go through. I second what the previous person said about the impact on our fire and our rescue, and on the impact of our sheriff's department, and the impact on our taxpayers, by the way. Someone's got to pay for that, and it's going to wind up being taxpayers. I just am kind of gobsmacked that this passed the planning commission and wound up here. If you all approve this, you're blowing a hole in the zoning ordinance, and sitting right there is 7,600 acres, and what are you going to say to them when they come? 10 times the amount of land, so what does that mean? 80,000 people? This has got a lot of ramifications, and I really hope you think about it long and hard. And I hope Mr. Fletcher comes back with a serious, well-thought-out application. I appreciate what he's done for this county, but this would really blow us up. Thank you.
Anyone else care to speak? Yes, John.
Thank you, members of the Board of Supervisors. Appreciate the opportunity. My name is Steve Ray. I'm in the Piedmont District. I live off of Port Town Road. I'm on the west side of Eldon Farms, about a half mile as a crow flies from Bill's place. I did want to support the other opponents of the application for all the reasons that the stated. The application is obviously extremely overbroad. I don't think it's would ever withstand a challenge in court that I suspect would be coming if you approved it. But I also recall this rodeo a couple of years ago that Bill brought a similar application for his property on 522, and I think the point he made, which I kind of want to respond to some of the comments that John made, is this bigger issue of people with large tracts of land and how are we going to make it affordable for folks to maintain those lands. And I would just, listening to comments tonight, caution you not to feel or not to get sucked in with what seems to be presented as a Hudson's choice. So it's either we subdivide and we lose our open land space, or we have to allow people to have unlimited use of their property with hordes of people coming to the county. And I just don't think that's realistic, and I don't think this is the place to be having a conversation. I think the Planning Commission and the comprehensive plan is where this needs to be hashed out. Where are the lines and the limits for all the reasons that permit people to express their permits overbroad? I think go without saying that you can't support that. Those sorts of taxing on our county resources, as well as fully outside the, I think, what is the consistent with our county and our county vision to have these sorts of events. Now that doesn't mean people can't have some events, and I think an event by event application makes sense, but this is clearly overbroad, and I just don't think this is the place tonight where this should be decided. It's such a very weighty issue for everybody in the county. It's what we're going to allow, and obviously, as someone pointed out, sitting right next to Eldon Farms, so we think about this quite a lot about what will happen to Eldon Farms and that large use, that large piece of land and how it will be used. So again, I would urge you to deny the application tonight unless there's going to be some substantial revision made to it. And I suspect that perhaps the county administrator is going to make some modifications to it. Thank you.
Anyone else care to speak? Back here.
Can I speak for the applicant?
Help yourself.
First of all, you're taking 168 acres, and people say you're preserving agriculture. To me, you're destroying it. I mean, can you raise grass where 500,000 cars are parked 3, 4, 5 times a year? Can you hay it? You can't hay it. You can't put cattle on it. All you're doing is creating a theme park or a mill that is that has absolutely has no business in Rappahannock County as far as I'm concerned. You recently turned down an application you did to the Planning Commission for somebody wanted to take 2 acres of agricultural land and make it into a parking lot. And you turned it down. Now we're talking about putting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cars in agricultural land, and doesn't seem to bother anybody. The other thing that I feel strongly about is that you are their bosses, that you've got to get a handle on the Planning Commission. This thing never should have reached you. It never should have had a tentative approval because it didn't have impact studies, it didn't have a VDOT study. What passes for a site plan is kind of a joke. I mean, we've got a circle here and a square there. That doesn't mean anything. I mean, I think you need a comprehensive site plan to know exactly what Mr. Fletcher plans to do. And the last thing, I can only talk from experience over 20 years ago before any of you were on a board of supervisors. My next door neighbor applied for a special use permit
And then it became a special exception for saying he wanted to have a large facility on 268 acres. Well, after it was approved, the first thing he did was subdivide the property. Took the 268 acres, took the 30 acres out, and that became a piece of land by itself, which could have been sold. He also set up another corporation, so his liability to the neighbors was less. He was, his major holding was not responsible for anything that happened on the property. And then what happened, I lived through this, every Saturday and Sunday, I had 100 to 150 people playing volleyball 200 feet from my house, drinking, getting drunk. I don't even know what the applications are here for alcohol. I mean, are we allow, beer trucks to pull up or that kind of thing? And it just seems to me this whole thing is fraught. It's just too open-ended. And finally, this installation next to me collapsed by itself. And they moved it somewhere else because there were some other problems. So I just really think first that this application is so non-specific, it's a joke. It really is. If you really need, impact studies, environmental studies, we're talking about 8,000 people coming here. I mean, it seems to me you should have an environmental study on what's going to happen to that land and rivers and the streams that are surrounding it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. My name is David Connick. I'm from Stonewall District. And, there's been a lot of good points made tonight on both sides of this issue. But I want to address something that actually Hank touched on, since this isn't really the public hearing. I'm a member of the Board of Zoning Appeals, and because of that, I go to every single planning commission meeting. And I was at the planning commission meeting not only this past month when this was first proposed by Mr. Fletcher. I was at the previous month's meeting at which Mr. Fletcher came and basically, I guess you'd say, sent up a kind of a test balloon and talked about what he wanted to do and how he wanted to do it to the planning commission. The planning commission told him to get with the zoning administrator and formulate some kind of an application. But my question and my issue that I want to bring up, that I hope that you will take into consideration, not just in respect of this, but in terms of future applications like this, and just the whole way that the board is operating. And it's the same thing I've said in previous meetings about the same exact problem. I can't take off my shoes and count how many people are here. But there's, 75 people here, 60 people? I don't know. Mr. Lisinski, you were at the planning commission meeting last month. How many people besides Bill and me and Paige Lenny were there at the meeting? Nobody. Not a single, none of these people were there. Oh yeah, you were there. Okay, 3 people. You didn't say anything. 3 people that are in this room tonight. I don't think I'm wrong. And one of them's not here, so that's all who came. And I think you ought to ask yourself, in light of what everybody has said, on both sides, why is that? Why is it? There's 2 real simple reasons. And as a member of the Board of Zoning Appeals, I can tell you we've had the same exact issue. And it was referred to earlier in the day. And I'm not casting aspersions and so forth, but it's time for the board to take stock of this kind of a thing. There is no excuse, none. And I worked in that office. I was zoning administrator, and we don't have any more zoning applications now than we did 35 years ago when I was zoning administrator. It's about the same number, 1 or 2, maybe 3 in a big month. There is no reason why all these people didn't get adequate notice of it.
in a timely way. There is no reason why it wasn't advertised properly. There is no reason why an application of this magnitude came up and got sent to the Planning Commission and was accepted for filing with what's in it, which many people have remarked on about all the ambiguities and things that aren't specific. There's no reason that happened. Why the notices didn't go out, like they always do or always have gone for 35 years, the day that they're sent to the paper, that's when they're sent to the neighbors. Always has been done that way. And why that didn't happen, you need to ask yourselves this question. Because now, because of that, first of all the concerns that all these people, some of them are valid, some of them are stupid, like he's going to have a KKK rally. You know, like somebody said, you can't discriminate. You know, the KKK wants to have a place to meet. Where are they going to go? I'm not going, but that's just kind of absurd. Bill Fletcher and his family have done as much or more for this county than anybody in this room, bar none. And they've been doing it for longer than anybody in this room, bar none, except maybe the Thorntons. Okay? So, as far as that goes, I trust Bill to do the right thing. And most of the concerns that you heard that are valid could be dealt with by putting appropriate conditions on it. But some of these people, that they all deserve to be heard, especially the neighbors, and some of them have valid concerns. And it's very disturbing to me of exactly what was just said by the previous speaker. Why they didn't get a notice in a timely way, and why they couldn't address some of their concerns to the Planning Commission, which is the way it's supposed to work. And why the Planning Commission didn't table it or ask for more information if that's what they wanted to do. And so now it's in your lap, and you all shouldn't be getting it, just like one of the previous speakers said, until it's a complete application with all the information and all the data so that reasonable people can make an informed judgment about what the heck is being applied for. And again, I want to say that generally the concepts of it I support. And I trust Bill and I trust the Fletcher family to do the right thing and to work with the board like Bill said in the beginning. He's not from outer space. And I trust the board to work in good faith with him to try and work out some kind of a reasonable compromise. One more thing I want to say is about board docs, and that's what I've addressed in the past. That's another thing. Okay, this application and letters and so forth are flying around now. How does it get on board docs? Sometimes it gets on board docs, other times it doesn't. Like you recently had a rezoning application, and there must have been 30 emails that got put on board docs the very morning of the hearing, amazingly. But somehow, an email from the highway department saying the thing was never going to be approved, that didn't make it on. And again, this application and the supporting documents or lack thereof, or people raising questions that have sent letters to the board, why doesn't that stuff get on board docs? Or how does it get on board docs? It's a magical thing that nobody seems to know. There ought to be a procedure so that if somebody writes a letter and it makes some valid points, everybody that's interested ought to be able to see it. And it shouldn't be put on there the morning of the hearing. It should all be, and you have a thing for meetings, you have a procedure in the county code, that needs rewriting. So that those kind of, I mean, that was written long before there was any internet or board docs. It needs to be rewritten. And things need to go on there in a timely way so people can have the information. So those are the things that I want to say and I want you to think about. The one more thing that I want to say, and that is, I think Bill's being treated, just like he said, very unfairly and in a completely arbitrary way about how he's trying to make a profit and so forth and so on. You know, this board basically did nothing about this thing up in Flint Hill. Because that's a non-profit, because somebody said, oh, well, that's a carnival, non-profit carnival. Well, I told you then, I'm telling you again, the fireworks and non-profit carnivals was put in the ordinance as a use in the agriculture district by right to accommodate the fire departments.
for their annual carnivals in Flint Hill, Sperryville, and Amosville. Not for some guy to put on theatrical performances and invite hundreds, if not thousands of people, and hundreds, if not thousands of cars parking right on the grass, just like this. There's not any regulation of that. Why not? I'm not off the subject, it's the same subject. You didn't tell anybody else they were off the subject. I think the zoning ordinance needs to be enforced in a fair and an impartial way to everybody. And if you're using property, if you're using land for a big event, whether it's profit or non-profit, that doesn't change the traffic. What do you think? There's going to be less accidents because they're going to a non-profit? They're going to drink less because they're going to a non-profit? They're going to pee or whatever else less or more because it's a non-profit? No. The use of the land should be what's the concern of the Planning Commission and this board when you're looking at this kind of a permit. And it doesn't make any difference, and it doesn't make any sense to let an event like that go on because certain people are going to go to that event, but another different kind of people, like somebody says, oh, the KKK is coming to Bill Fletcher's. You know, that's nonsense. That's nonsense. People are people. And how many of them, and how many cars, and how much sewage facilities, and what the rescue squad thing is, and the highway is all the same, no matter whether it's profit or non-profit. And so therefore I suggest to you that in addition to sending this back to the Planning Commission, they ought to take a look at these kind of revisions for all these kind of events. Because this really isn't a field party, this is something else. And that thing up there is not a non-profit carnival either. So you really ought to send it back, and you really ought to think about this, because as you see, we get more and more people in here, more people have great ideas on how they want to do something to make money, and one minute they're for it, and the next minute, oh, it's going to cost too much traffic, and they don't want it. So all I'm saying is it's time to look at all that. Those ordinances were written in 1985. And what year is it? It's 37 years ago. Or 32 years, sorry, or 42, I can't do that. It's either 32 or 42, I know that. So, it needs to be looked at in a serious way. And the comprehensive plan needs to be looked at in a serious way with these kind of things in mind, because they are both woefully inadequate to deal with this kind of thing. And these things should be decided fairly and not on the basis of who's friends or who, and who shows up and who doesn't, and so forth. And I think the board needs to do something like notice and getting the information out and making sure people know it. Thanks.
Thank you. It's 32. Anyone else care to speak?
Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me, Bill. After everyone has spoken, you'll have an opportunity.
Okay.
Anyone else care to speak? Anyone else care to speak? Okay, Bill, you.
I appreciate the discussion and the comments everybody's made tonight. I'd like to correct one thing. I'm not going to post a bond. I've never seen a bond that really worked right. I carry liability insurance, $3 million, and depending on the size of the event, I'm going to require whoever the attendee is to carry a reasonable amount of insurance. Because I think that's the way to handle it. I didn't ask anybody to come tonight. I greatly appreciate Mr. Janot's comments and Jay's and the pointers. I think it's a good application. It may need to be modified in some ways. I think the county needs something like this. If I was after the money, I'd divide it up in 20 lots, which I probably could under today's zoning ordinance. I want to keep the farm operating the same way it has in our family since 1739. I want to be a benefit to the community, the Lane, the Thornhill, all of the large landowners I know want to work with the county and be a benefit to the county. Times are changing. The price of operating the farm has gone up tremendously. And we can't make it on cattle alone. We can't make it on hay alone. Or not many people can. I've got probably 1,000 acres of open ground in Rappahannock and 1,000 acres of wooded. And I try to do everything I can to have the least impact and be environmentally conscious with my land. I don't think this is going to affect the quality of the Thornton River. I don't think anybody's going to be in the Thornton River. I've leased my land for hunting for probably 15 years. And I've never really gotten any substantive complaints about it. I spent $10,000 because a neighbor complained that the hunters were getting off of them. So instead of a regular survey, I went and got a GPS survey and had them loaded on this thing so they could know that it wouldn't trespass on a neighbor. I don't want to hurt anybody. I want this to be a benefit to everybody in the community. And I think it will be. I don't know many people that don't like bluegrass and country music. I'm not going to have rock music down there because I can't hear it. I don't understand it. But I appreciate your time and consideration. I appreciate everybody coming here tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Anybody else? Clear public comment, closed. Any comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate everybody that came out tonight, but I seriously think we're going to send it back because of defects in the notice. I don't think the board has any, not only any obligation, but any right to be discussing it. As I do have to agree with Mr. Connick in one sense, it was not a different subject, it was just a different location. Same type of land use. We allow for one place, not another, simply because of perhaps the clientele.
Remand this application back to the planning commission.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Goes back to the planning commission. Yeah, we need a recess, gentlemen. 5 minutes.
The next item on the agenda is Richard Burke's position, or replacements for Mr. Burke. Let's do the easy one first. The easy one is the building official. You have some applications that you have been given. We also have another one that I need to pass out to you for your consideration. So if you take that and pass one around. So what I'd like you to do is what we did on the previous interviews is to send me your top 2 candidates. Since we only have 5, you want to do the top 2. And at that point, I will schedule interviews. I put a date on here that this meeting would be recessed to reconvene June 8th of 2017 for a closed session to interview specific candidates for the building official position. I picked that date, I didn't check with your schedules, I put it on there as a placeholder. So I don't know if that date would suit you or not.
Some morning.
6/8, June the 8th.
What time?
It's probably better for candidates in the afternoon, as far as getting away from work.
Mornings would be difficult for me. Morning would be difficult for me. Or midday, I think
So 3, 4, 5, like we did last
that would
time.
be good. How about earlier?
Ron, can you do 1?
I don't know yet. I don't have anything with me. I don't have access to it.
All right, well, 2, Chris, will that work for you? Is that early?
Not really, but,
And we can pick another date?
do,
Well, it sounds like that day's okay, it's just the time, right?
yeah, then I could do it in the morning, but,
But Ron
I can't, yeah. 7 could work.
Thursday.
That's the day after tomorrow.
And that's probably pretty short to get somebody in here. I haven't received any comments from anyone regarding who you liked or didn't like, so we can do it next week if you'd like.
I could do the 12th to the 13th.
Yeah, actually right now, Thursday, it's Mondays and Fridays, and this coming Thursday I already have appointments. And then next week I think I have 3 as well. And unfortunately Labor Day is better for me unless it's Wednesdays.
Do you want to try for Wednesday?
Wednesday the 14th?
No,
It's not good, well,
I'm leaving.
yeah, 14th is not good for me.
I mean, I could probably do this coming Wednesday better than anything else. If the other one could work it. But
Can you-
then you gotta try and get them to come home.
That's not much notice for them.
Yeah, we can try.
What's that?
The 7th?
Let's shoot for that, see.
At what time?
Any time during the day is fine for me, so.
Which means you need to go home and send me your top 2 candidates.
Right.
That's 6, that is 7.
June 7th, and I'll get back to you with the time when I talk to the candidates. But you need to send me, you now have 5 resumes, so you need to send me your top 2. All right. The next one is the radio project. Mike, do you want to talk about that?
I went down to Buchanan County with Richie. The 3 counties made an appointment with the sheriff and fire and rescue down there and their 911 call center to see how the Harris contract was working for New Kent. New Kent has put their radio recently into production. They were very pleased with the radio, especially the, I don't have my notes, they're brand new handheld. They said that they had so much more range, control, talking ability than they've ever had before. But they certainly had problems with Harris and their subcontractors in getting the radios installed, getting the towers up and going. One of the subcontractors was out of New Jersey and they spent Monday as a travel day down, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday work and be gone Friday. They also acted like they were in charge and would set up appointments for police cars to be there to put in radios, and lo and behold, then they weren't available. So when the county had a disadvantage or inconvenience, especially when they didn't have spare cars, they took their cars home and So, but they were very pleased once the system was up and going. They felt that Harris probably oversold their product as to the number of people they had to install it, implement it. So it was helpful to hear a number of things that were issues and how to maybe look out for them ahead of time. They felt that many of the change orders that Harris did not charge them extra for, which was good to hear. But they felt quite often, I think one of the lieutenants spent a whole afternoon with Harris guy and explained everything they needed, and the next week there was somebody new that had no record of anything that they had discussed. So they had to spend the whole afternoon explaining it all over again. So they felt very frustrated about many of these things. But they are very pleased with the system once it was up and going. They did mention Stafford, Jill at Stafford, who, as opposed to the engineers, had a lot of experience on the ground, and when the engineers were saying, well, it's this and this and this, and Jill says, no, the officer kicked the wire loose, you just got to reattach it. So I think Richie has a lot of that information, if not the guy over in Culpeper or Fauquier took out a lot of information. So I have to admit I did not get as much information as I should have. So I was happy to hear that, you know, they were happy with the system once it got up and going, but getting it there was a little bit of a strain. So that's pretty much what I have to report.
I think that we need somebody that's going to be able to continue on with the project. There's 4 days of training in June, and we don't have anyone.
I think that's maybe next week, isn't it?
So I think that we need somebody that's going to be involved in it, and we don't have anyone to do that.
What days?
I don't know the dates.
I want to.
I'll get the dates for you, but I think and I don't know if there's somebody in the county that can go, but we haven't really had any volunteers. And it's really not good to have a volunteer because they've got jobs to do, and we need somebody that's really going to be there.
But we haven't sold anybody to be volunteer either.
Well, Kevin Williams has been going to the meetings, but he's got a full-time job. So he's been helping in the process, but I don't know that he can go 4.5 days.
Yeah. Well, I can't even find anybody to volunteer if I don't know when and where the training is, so as soon as you can get that information there.
And I might be able to cover some of those days, I don't know.
Maybe it's a possibility where we split it or something, but I know I've got a couple of appointments.
Those meetings are over in Culpeper, so at least they're nearby. And I think they basically training management, I believe.
Are they in Monday? In July?
No,
I think they're next week.
And every Monday, first at 2 o'clock, I couldn't do it today, but it's 2 o'clock, there's a telemeeting where you call in the number of all 3 counties and the engineers are on the phone call. With Harris and 3 counties and federal then I think it's Thursdays the 3 counties get on the phone and call together.
And the last item that we have is the emergency manager position. Any thoughts on that one, gentlemen, that you want to do?
Well, immediately, I think, I was at the last fire association meeting at Sperryville Rescue, and most of the, I guess there was a consensus. The consensus was that while several people understood Mr. Burke asking for the deputy coordinator to bring the radios in, they don't understand why they didn't verify that they had the radios and the radios went back out to the deputies. Right now, we don't have a deputy coordinator that has a radio. And I believe all of them were appointed by this board. I know Mr. Connectus was. But I see no reason why we don't reassign those radios to the deputies. It was Mr. Connectus, Frankie Huff, and Jackie Estes. And certainly all 3 of those people are known to this board and should be signed back out the radio in case we have an emergency.
We can look into that, but I guess the question is.
Well, I don't know why we need to look into that. I mean, we really need to be prepared. Right now, we're not prepared for emergency. So we need to settle that now, not look into it. That's my feelings on it. I don't know why the radios were taken from deputies that this board appointed.
Mr.
We
Burke wanted them to come back in and to be accounted for because it's $12,000 worth of radios.
I understand that, but the question is, why didn't they go right back out? They had the radios, so it's not an issue.
They're in the office and they can go get them. So we can look at it and I'll find out why Mr. Burke did that and we'll see if we can resolve it.
But those deputies were appointed by the board, and I think that the board needs to require that they have those radios. If they're going to be deputies, they need to be prepared.
But we need to appoint someone to be the emergency manager until we hire somebody. The state requires us to do that. So we will need to appoint someone. So
is there anyone in that role now, or is it vacant? Or just...
Richie is in that role right now, but right now he's out of the county, he's traveling. So
this is his time period to be doing this voluntarily? Is that
that's correct.
The resolution we approved earlier?
Correct.
All right. So
Well, with that in mind, Mr. Connector said that he could do it until we found an individual to do the job. I put that in the form of a motion that we do that right now so that we don't have that vacancy. He's been a deputy for 11 years. He's wrote the plan or updated it.
When's Mr. Burke returning?
Thursday of this week.
So we're talking about 2 days.
But you still need somebody in that position until we fill it.
Yeah, how is it? There's somebody call, who's handling, emergency management right now for.
I talked to the sheriff's office today, and so has Art. It would be myself, Art, and Frankie, and Jackie Estes.
But none of y'all have radios.
Right. They're in the office.
But they'd have to come, depending on where the emergency is, they'd have to come here, get a radio, and then go out to the emergency. It doesn't make any sense.
That's an easy problem to solve. We need an emergency manager.
Yeah. I made a motion. We can solve that real quick. This is exactly the type of work that Mr. Connectus did when he was a professional. He worked for the railroads.
Who are we?
Right over here.
Sure. A little bit. So. Can't see him.
Okay. Well, that's good. Come hither so that we can grill you.
Mr. Chairman, can I just interject something real quick here?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. The only thing I was going to say is, and I'm not pointing any fingers at Richie or anything, but time and again, whenever we've had adverse weather conditions and such, I have offered to go out and patrol the roads, especially rock mills where we generally have problems and such. And I would be willing to do that in the interim until somebody shows up, because especially if we get these situations where we have trees down over the road because of weather or whatever at night, and chances are if the deputies haven't found it, then somebody could very easily run into something, situation. especially with high water and so on. So I would be willing, as I mentioned here at the board 2 months ago or something, that I would be willing to do that. But that's, up to you to do that. I've been deputy emergency coordinator, as Ron mentioned, for 11 years. And then prior to that, for 17 years, I did the same thing with the railroad. So it's, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I see that unfortunately we don't have a lot of the issues, railroads and high transportation corridors and such the other counties do, but our biggest issue primarily is weather more than anything else. And with the flooding that we had, well, we already had a water risk here a week or so ago at Laurel Mills. So this is something that I would offer to do, and I made a suggestion to Richie, and he said, well, we'll worry about it when it happens.
Well, we'll take you up on that.
But anyway, it's
So we have three. I mean, we have Mr. Estes and who's the third?
Frankie.
Mr. Huff. I mean, either one of them all, right?
I think they're all wanting to serve as deputies, but if we need somebody in a position now,
Sure.
Well, we got a motion on the table, and we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
None did. And all those opposed?
I'm sorry, who seconded that motion?
Chris. You got it, Art.
okay. So
Thank you, Art.
you're welcome. And I'll work closely with Connie to make sure that she understands, what my role is and such like that. I guess the only other thing is just to notify the sheriff's office that if something does, fuel spill or whatever, that somebody contact me and let me know. And if for some reason I'm unavailable, then I'll get a hold of Debbie, and then also, whether it's Frank or whether it's somebody else. But I'll make sure that the county's going to be protected from that perspective.
I guess we need to draft basically advertising.
Is this an appropriate point to discuss the role of the sheriff's department will or will not be going forward as it relates to emergency management?
It's my understanding that the sheriff was not interested in
Right,
emergency
so
management.
they're out of this now entirely.
I thought she wanted to do E911, but not the emergency services.
But if we do that, then we won't have Mr. Burke back, and we wouldn't have him here to help with mentoring some of the new people. So we can certainly give it to her, but
I don't understand what you just said, that if we moved E911 over there, he wouldn't come back.
it'll be under the sheriff. So it
We're
would
still
be,
emergency services.
the E911 position would be under the sheriff. And so,
And he wouldn't,
she would,
he wouldn't be going to work
well, he
there?
was, well, I don't know if she would hire him.
Didn't she say she wasn't interested? Is that?
Well, she told me that, to get to Ted Davis, when she had a little picnic out here, that she was interested in an E911 coordinator, moving that into the sheriff, because they're already doing a lot of that, but not the emergency services, because, and it makes perfect sense. I mean, she says that when there's an emergency, she has to respond anyway, her department does. So whether she's here or her department, they're already responding. She can't really coordinate other branches of what needs to be done, and I think that makes sense if you think about it.
Well, the problem is that if the next sheriff that comes along doesn't want to do this, then we're out. So as it relates to the advertisement, we need to decide now if we're advertising for EMS management and E911, or emergency management and E911, or just emergency management. Is that the question before us here?
I think we need to look at an emergency manager, and I guess the question is it full-time or part-time?
Yeah. Can I, Mr. Chairman, we had a chief out here. Is it appropriate to get an opinion maybe from the association perspective, or?
Sure, go ahead.
And I don't know if you're hearing a struggle with this a little bit. What is the association think these days?
Well, Art keeps minutes and stuff too.
But
But it's, you need an emergency manager that can probably expand the role that Richie's been doing. There's a lot of other things emergency management can be doing. And that could be added to make that job a more full-time job.
What about the E911 piece? Do you have any opinion on that at all?
I think we've got problems either way. We moved in the sheriff's office, like you said, they could move out. A new sheriff come in, not wanted. I know there's been a lot of conflict between the sheriff's office and fire and rescue on being able to listen to tapes and stuff like that.
if I could just interject, the association had me write a letter under Jack Atkins' signature, and I gave that copy of it to Ms. Kaiser. And that is that the association's feeling is that the E911 coordinator, emergency services coordinator should be under the county administration and not under the sheriff's office. That letter was, what, about 10 days ago, I guess, I gave it to you.
It does solve a lot of your problems right now, though, to put it in with the sheriff's office, and that's taken care of for you. Now, maybe when she leaves in 4 years, you may be faced with the same problem, and of hiring somebody to do that position, but it would be a quick solution to do it that way.
And the other thing which I could add that goes along with it, Sandy Carter is, lack of a better term, she's the acting E911 coordinator. I mean, she's been trained to do that when John Henry was the assistant coordinator, and so she's been handling that. I guess her title would be assistant E911 coordinator. That's the role that and she's still performing that service today when she's in business.
And she's obviously not the sheriff's office.
No.
Yeah.
No, Richie hired her specifically to fill in for John Henry when John Henry had his stroke. And then when he decided to leave, she's just filled in with that as one of her full-time jobs.
My discussions with all involved, I think she would be willing to work under the sheriff if we moved in that direction. And I think they already have a pretty good working relationship. Both of them actually work with Company 3, the sheriff and Ms. Carter. But anyway, whatever the board thinks is best.
So in that situation, we would just need to advertise for emergency manager services coordinator.
I think so, and I really think that it's premature to try and find somebody like the chiefs recommended with all those, being a medic and all those other certifications, because I've talked to a couple, there's a lot of things that they, and you know as well as I do, a lot of things simply don't get said at the association meetings that people will say outside those meetings. And a lot of the people that are running these calls just don't feel that you're going to get somebody with that experience to work out here for any kind of money when they're working in Fairfax for $90,000 to $150,000, $200,000 a year with their overtime. They're doing that in Applemore. They're getting those kind of hours in Applemore. We're not going to get the kind of trained people. It's premature to post that.
But partly what we're looking for is somebody that if we have to go to paid staff, that they can
help make the transition. Well, that's what I'm thinking, but
that was partly why the reason they were putting in there, having the credentials to do that.
if this person's running calls, they're not coordinating events or helping to coordinate. It's the same thing the sheriff's saying. They're going to have tunnel vision because you've got a patient that's got to be packaged and sent somewhere. So what do? Leave the patient? I mean,
They're gone with the patient while the event's still going on.
Exactly.
The next patient.
And whoever has one of those positions is going to have tunnel vision. I can see, the sheriff said that she can't really focus on one if she's got to do the other. And that makes sense to me, but until somebody makes a plan of sometimes, I don't see.
Well, I understand.
The person on the ground can see things better than us in the clouds.
So how do we budget this emergency manager position for next year? Is it a full-time or a part-time?
I don't remember. I think it was full-time.
There wasn't much money for a full-time. Well, training. But the gentleman that came up here, was it Mark Stone?
Yeah.
The regional
He's
man?
the region. He's the region 2 coordinator.
You know,
for
what
this
they're
area.
talking about, doing, they recommend doing is, finding a young person that just got out of school that's had this training and can connect the dots. That's basically somebody that's just, again, watching things and trying to coordinate the different aspects of an emergency situation. I think Colonel Canuford, he was a emergency manager when we had that blizzard in '96 and he brought in the National Guard. He was a volunteer and he worked, I don't know how many hours he worked, but I guess he was part-time. But he managed to get the National Guard here.
Steve Deere.
Bring him right straight after,
97.
50 or 60 years, he was still a good hitter.
So the question is whether we're running out, right? That's the question before us.
Correct. Salary and wages for emergency services is $47,730.
We're not going to fill that wish list
Good try.
if we tripled it.
Well, Mark implied that he would help us find somebody. They might even have some school or whatever.
Triple the salary, I'll go back to school.
Is 47 the part-time? Isn't that part-time?
Is it benefits?
Get somebody for that.
Well, here we go.
Yeah, that's right.
Gotta give it a try. Because by law, we have to have somebody in there, right? I mean, how much time do we have before we have to fill it before?
Well, we got to fill it. We got time to do this, I think. I don't think the job says, I don't think the code requirement is that they have to be paid or how when they work, we just have to have somebody in that role. Because the way the statute's written, it can be the county administrator or a member of this board until somebody else is appointed. So when that law was first, adopted or whatever, codified, it foresaw, I guess it foresaw the fact that it was probably a part-time person, or at least somebody doing it part-time, until we could find something better. Because obviously somebody like me is not very reliable. So you want somebody reliable in there, even if they're
I
part-time.
was thinking Scotch tape and bailing wire. That was what I was saying.
Duct tape. Man's best friend, duct tape.
Okay.
Gentlemen, that's it. So we need to recess until we reconvene for the interviews.
So that's Wednesday now. Tuesday?
And I will let you know the time.
But we need to let you know our finals.
Yes.
If I could, just before you adjourn, I just want to clarify just what my position is as far as what I'm going to be doing. I just want to make sure that we all have this understanding.
I would think it would be acting emergency services coordinator.
Okay.
Thanks, Art.
Yes, sir.
Motion to recess,
So moved.
second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
All right.